He bought the last train ticket for a stranger, then had to spend the night with her family. Seattle's King Street station buzzed with the restless energy of late-night travelers. The giant departure board flashed one final announcement. 7:43 p.m., last train boarding. A voice echoed through the station. Final boarding call for Maple Ridge. At almost the exact same moment, two people sprinted toward the ticket counter from opposite directions. One carried a worn leather backpack. The other dragged a rolling suitcase that bounced noisily across the polished floor. Neither noticed the other until, thud, their luggage collided. "Oh, I'm sorry. No, that was my fault." They exchanged an awkward smile before turning toward the ticket clerk. At exactly the same time, "One ticket to Maple Ridge, please." The clerk glanced at his computer, then looked back at them with an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry." He shrugged. "Only one confirmed ticket left." Silence settled between them. Both stared at the screen, then at each other. The woman smiled first. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind people learn after disappointing themselves too many times. "It's okay." She stepped back. "You take it." The man frowned. "Are you sure?" She nodded. "I'll figure something out." Without waiting for another word, she walked a few steps away and pulled out her phone. The call connected almost immediately. "Mom." Her voice softened. "I'm sorry." A pause. "I know. I promised." She closed her eyes. "I won't make Dad's birthday again." Another pause. "I tried. I really did." Her shoulders slumped. "I'm sorry." She ended the call before her mother could answer. Standing only a few feet away, the man had heard every word. He looked down at the ticket in his hand, then toward the departure gate, then back at the woman. Without saying anything, he walked back to the counter. "I'd like to transfer this ticket." The clerk blinked. "To her?" He nodded. A minute later, the woman looked up in surprise as he held the ticket toward her. "Go." She stared at him. "What about you?" He smiled faintly. "I'll find another way home. But your father's birthday sounds a lot harder to postpone than mine." For the first time that evening, she laughed. A small laugh, but a genuine one. "I'm Emily. Noah." She accepted the ticket with trembling fingers. "Thank you." The announcement echoed through the station again. Doors closing in 1 minute. Emily barely had time to wave before running toward the platform. Noah watched as the train slowly pulled away into the night. He adjusted the strap on his backpack and turned toward the exit. He had already begun wondering which hotel still had vacancies. "Sir?" The ticket clerk called after him. Noah turned. "We've arranged an overnight shuttle bus for passengers who couldn't get a train seat. It'll follow the highway north. It isn't as comfortable, but it should get you there by morning." Noah looked through the station windows. Dark clouds were gathering over Seattle. "When does it leave?" 5 minutes. He nodded. "I'll take it." The shuttle wasn't full. Only a handful of passengers climbed aboard. Most looked just as exhausted as Noah felt. He settled into a seat near the back and closed his eyes. He had no idea that before sunrise, he would see Emily again. 40 minutes later, the weather changed without warning. Dark clouds swallowed the stars. Rain pounded against the train windows. Lightning flashed across the mountains. Emily's train gradually slowed, then came to a complete stop. An announcement crackled through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to severe storm damage ahead, the railway has been temporarily closed. We appreciate your patience." Passengers exchanged worried looks. Outside, rain lashed against the empty countryside. 20 anxious minutes later, another announcement followed. "We're unable to continue tonight. You'll need to disembark at the next emergency station. There are no replacement trains until the weather improves." Emily stepped onto a tiny platform surrounded by darkness. It barely deserved to be called a station. No taxis, no hotels with available rooms, only one small waiting shelter. And endless rain. Several miles away, Noah's shuttle bus wasn't having much better luck. Floodwater had swallowed part of the highway. Emergency crews blocked the road completely. The driver sighed into the microphone. "Folks, we're not getting through tonight. The nearest shelter is the emergency rail station just ahead. We'll wait there until the roads reopen." The shuttle slowly turned into the same small station where Emily's train had already stopped. Passengers climbed out one by one. Noah pulled up the hood of his jacket and stepped into the rain. He walked beneath the station shelter, shaking water from his backpack, completely unaware that someone nearby had just recognized him. Nearly an hour later, Headlights appeared through the storm. Emily's parents' SUV pulled into the nearly empty parking lot. Her mother jumped out first. "Emily!" They hugged tightly, despite the pouring rain. Her father climbed out more slowly, smiling the moment he saw her. "You made it. I told your mother you'd find a way." Emily hugged him again. "I'm sorry I almost didn't. You came. That's what matters." As they loaded her suitcase into the SUV, Emily glanced back toward the station. Someone stood alone beneath the shelter. Rainwater dripped from the edge of the roof. A familiar navy jacket, a worn leather backpack. Noah. For a second she simply stared. What is he doing here? Her mother followed her gaze. "Who's that?" Emily smiled in disbelief. "The man. The one who gave me the train ticket." Both of her parents turned at once. What? He couldn't get on the train. He took the overnight shuttle instead. And maybe it got stranded here because of the storm. Her mother didn't hesitate for another second. Umbrella in hand, she marched straight across the parking lot. Emily hurried after her. "Mom, it's okay." "No, really." But her mother was already standing in front of Noah. "You." He looked up in surprise. "Yes? You're the young man who gave my daughter your train ticket." Noah smiled politely. "It wasn't a big deal." "It was." She took hold of his arm before he could protest. "You're coming home with us." He blinked. "Oh, I couldn't possibly." "You absolutely could. I'll find somewhere to stay." "There isn't anywhere. I'll manage." Emily's father finally walked over, rain dripping from the brim of his baseball cap. He extended his hand. "I'm Richard." "Noah." Richard shook it warmly, then smiled. "Son, you already gave my daughter a seat." He glanced toward the warm SUV waiting nearby. "The least we can do is give you a bed." For the first time that night, Noah Bennett found himself completely outnumbered. Emily looked from her determined mother to her smiling father, then back at the quiet stranger who had changed her evening with one simple act of kindness. She couldn't help smiling. Somehow, the man who had simply been trying to get home was suddenly coming home with her instead. Emily Parker was 29 years old, a successful marketing director whose calendar was always full and whose phone rarely stopped ringing. For years, every promotion had come with another sacrifice, another holiday missed, another family dinner canceled, another birthday celebrated through a video call. Every visit home eventually led to the same question. "So, when are you getting married?" She always laughed it off, then buried herself in work again. She loved her family deeply, yet every trip home carried a quiet guilt she could never seem to shake. This year had been different. She had promised her father she wouldn't miss his birthday again. She had almost broken that promise. Noah Bennett, 34, was everything Emily wasn't. A civil engineer, patient and quiet, the kind of man who solved problems without needing recognition. Fresh off a demanding bridge project, he wanted nothing more than a hot shower, 8 hours of sleep, and the comfort of his own apartment. Helping strangers came naturally to him. Being thanked for it never did. As the Parker family's SUV disappeared into the rainy night, neither Noah nor Emily could have imagined that one last train ticket, one storm, and one unexpected shuttle bus had quietly changed the direction of both their lives. By the time they reached the Parker family home, it was almost midnight. The drive from the tiny rural station had taken nearly 3 hours through heavy rain and winding country roads. Under normal circumstances, every light in the farmhouse would have been off by then. Tonight was different. It was Saturday night and Richard Parker's birthday. When Emily's parents had called to say the train had been stranded by the storm, no one had gone home. Her aunts and uncles stayed. The cousins refused to sleep. Even the children insisted they would wait. The birthday cake still sat untouched in the middle of the dining table. Warm golden light spilled from every window of the old white farmhouse. Compared to the lonely station they had just left behind, the house felt wonderfully alive. Laughter drifted through the front door. Someone was shuffling a deck of cards. Children whispered excitedly in the living room, trying very hard, and completely failing, to stay awake. The smell of homemade soup and freshly baked bread still lingered in the air. Emily stopped just inside the doorway. For a brief second, emotion caught in her throat. She had spent months moving between airports, hotels, conference rooms, and client dinners. Yet somehow, walking through her parents' front door always made her feel 20 years younger. The moment everyone saw her, the room erupted. "Emily, there she is. You made it." Her mother laughed. "I told you she'd find a way. Then she gently pulled Noah forward. "And this," she announced proudly, "is the young man who gave Emily the last train ticket." That single sentence was apparently all the introduction anyone needed. Within seconds, the entire family reached exactly the same conclusion. "Oh, so you're Noah?" Emily frowned. "Yes?" Her aunt smiled knowingly. "We've heard so much about you." Emily blinked. "No, you haven't. We understand." Another aunt winked dramatically. "Some things stay private." Emily slowly turned toward Noah. He looked just as confused as she was. Neither of them had the slightest idea how they had accidentally become the evening's biggest family headline. Things only became worse, or funnier, depending on who was watching. Emily's grandmother shuffled into the living room carrying a plate of warm chocolate chip cookies. She studied Noah carefully from head to toe with the confidence of a woman who claimed she could spot a good husband before dessert. After several thoughtful seconds, she nodded with satisfaction. "My future grandson." Emily nearly dropped the glass of lemonade someone had just handed her. "Grandma." The older woman looked completely innocent. "What?" "I like him." Across the room, 8-year-old Lily wandered over while nibbling on a cookie. She looked at Noah, then at Emily, then back again. "When's the wedding?" Emily quietly considered disappearing into the floor. Noah tried to rescue the situation. "We actually met tonight." Lily frowned. "So?" He smiled awkwardly. "We're not dating." The little girl shrugged. "That's not what Grandma says." Emily buried her face in both hands. Every explanation somehow made things worse. Noah patiently described the station, the last ticket and the storm, then the shuttle bus and the emergency stop. Emily nodded beside him so enthusiastically she nearly gave herself a headache. Surely, now everyone would understand. Instead, her uncle burst into laughter. "That's exactly how romantic movies start." Another cousin immediately agreed. "If you two made this story up, you deserve an Oscar." Someone else asked whether they preferred a spring wedding or an autumn wedding. Emily looked helplessly toward Noah. "I promise, my family isn't always like this." He glanced around the room, where 3 different relatives had already begun debating the perfect honeymoon destination for 2 complete strangers. "I have a feeling they absolutely are." Emily laughed so hard she nearly spilled her tea. For the first time in months, she forgot what stress felt like. Finally, Emily's mother clapped her hands. "Enough. We've been waiting for hours. My husband's birthday dinner isn't getting any younger." Everyone hurried toward the dining room. Richard stood at the head of the table. He looked around at every familiar face, then at Emily. Only after seeing her safely home did he finally smile. "Now we can celebrate." The room filled with applause. Someone lit the birthday candles. Children began singing before the adults could catch up. Noah quietly watched from the end of the table. He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen a family postpone an entire celebration simply because one person hadn't made it home yet. It was loud, chaotic, and completely unorganized, and somehow, perfect. After dinner, Richard disappeared into the garage. A few minutes later, Noah noticed him struggling with an old wooden rocking chair. One armrest had worked itself loose over the years. Every movement produced an unhappy creak. Without saying anything, Noah walked over. Construction work had taught him to notice structural problems almost instinctively. Richard smiled. "It belonged to Emily's grandfather. I've been meaning to fix it for months." Noah rolled up his sleeves. Together they searched through dusty toolboxes, replaced worn screws, reinforced weakened joints, and carefully sanded rough edges smooth. They worked mostly in comfortable silence. Noah never looked around to see whether anyone was watching. He never treated the repair like a performance. The chair simply needed fixing, so he fixed it. Standing quietly in the kitchen doorway, Emily watched through the window. She remembered men she'd dated, men who announced every good deed before anyone else noticed, men who somehow turned kindness into self-promotion. Noah wasn't like that. Even if no one had been standing there, he would have repaired the chair exactly the same way. For the first time, Emily found herself wondering what kind of life shaped a man into someone so quietly dependable. When the chair was finally finished, Richard lowered himself into it carefully. No creak, no wobble, just smooth and gentle movement. He rocked once, then smiled. Perfect. Looking at Noah, he nodded with genuine admiration. "You've got good hands." Noah chuckled. "My job usually involves bridges. I suppose chairs are just smaller bridges." Richard laughed. I like that. Much later, while everyone searched the pantry for leftover pie, Richard and Noah found themselves standing together on the back porch. Rainwater still dripped softly from the roof. Inside, laughter continued filling the house. Richard watched Emily through the kitchen window. She was helping her mother wash dishes while laughing with her cousins. He smiled quietly. You know, she almost didn't make it tonight. Noah nodded. I know. Richard folded his arms. For the last 5 birthdays, there was always another meeting, another flight, another deadline. We stopped expecting her. It hurt less that way. After a pause, he added quietly, but your mother still said another plate. Every single year, just in case. He looked toward the untouched birthday candles that had finally burned down an hour earlier. This year, I truly believed we'd celebrate without her again. Noah remembered the phone call Emily had made at the station. I won't make Dad's birthday again. Now, those words carried an entirely different meaning. She hadn't been running because she feared disappointing her family. She had been running because she desperately wanted to keep one promise, for the first time. Noah understood her completely. Emily Parker hadn't chosen work over the people she loved. She had simply spent too many years believing success required sacrificing the moments that mattered most. And somehow, one last train ticket had given her the chance to come home before it was too late. The storm cleared just before sunrise. When morning arrived, the countryside looked as though it had been washed clean overnight. Sunlight shimmered across rain-soaked fields, birds returned to the trees, and the air smelled of wet pine and fresh earth. At breakfast, the railway company released another update. The damaged section of track would not reopen until Monday morning. The highway Noah's shuttle had taken remained flooded as well. For the moment, every route back to Seattle was closed. Noah wasn't going anywhere. Emily sighed apologetically. I promise this town isn't usually this difficult to leave. You've apologized 4 times since breakfast. I have. You have. She laughed. I'll try to stop. I hope you don't. She looked at him curiously. Why? Because it usually means you're smiling. She rolled her eyes. You've known me for barely 24 hours. I've learned quickly. She shook her head, unable to hide another smile. Richard folded the morning newspaper and looked around the kitchen. Well, it looks like nobody's going anywhere today. He pushed back his chair and clapped his hands once. Might as well fire up the grill. Within an hour, the backyard had transformed into an impromptu Sunday barbecue. Foldable chairs appeared from the garage. Someone hung string lights beneath the old oak tree, even though it was still daytime. Emily's mother carried bowls of potato salad, baked beans, and fresh corn onto the picnic table. Children chased each other across the yard, while Richard's brothers argued over baseball scores. The entire family seemed remarkably talented at turning unexpected delays into celebrations. Noah volunteered to cook. It sounded simple enough. After all, how hard could grilling be? Emily folded her arms. You sound very confident. I spent 4 years studying engineering. I think I can handle hamburgers. She grinned. We'll see. For the first 10 minutes, everything went perfectly. Then reality arrived. Richard asked Noah to help move another picnic table. The task took less than a minute. When Noah turned back toward the grill, smoke billowed into the sky. The hot dogs had become little black sticks. Emily burst into laughter. You've invented edible firewood. I prefer artisan charcoal. I'm not sure that's FDA approved. Determined to redeem himself, Noah carefully placed 2 beautiful steaks onto the grill. This time, he refused to leave. He watched every second. He adjusted the temperature. He timed everything perfectly. Then the Parker family's elderly golden retriever wandered over. Without warning, the dog snatched one freshly cooked steak straight off the serving plate and sprinted triumphantly across the yard. No! Noah instinctively took off after him. The children immediately joined the chase. Within seconds, half the family was running across the lawn, while the dog proudly carried his stolen prize like an Olympic champion. Emily laughed so hard, she had to grab the picnic table to stay standing. Tears streamed down her face. You just lost a steak, to a 12-year-old dog. He cheated. The dog? He had home field advantage. Even Richard had to wipe tears from his eyes. By lunchtime, Noah accepted that his reputation as grill master had officially ended before it had begun. Emily's uncle quietly rescued the remaining hamburgers before anyone else starved. The afternoon drifted by without anyone noticing the hours. Neighbors wandered over carrying homemade pies. Children organized an enthusiastic baseball game that seemed to have different rules every 5 minutes. Someone turned on old country music. Someone else started teaching the youngest cousins how to dance. Before sunset, Richard stood in the middle of the yard holding an old camera. Family picture. Everyone gathered together. Noah instinctively stepped backward. "I'll take it." Richard looked at him as though he'd said something completely ridiculous. "You will not. This is a family photo." "Exactly." Richard smiled. "So get over here." Before Noah could protest, Emily's mother gently pulled him into the back row. "You were here for the birthday. Your family today." The camera clicked. For reasons Noah couldn't explain, standing beside Emily felt surprisingly natural. Later, everyone escaped the afternoon heat by moving inside. Emily's grandmother disappeared for a moment, before returning with 3 enormous family photo albums. Emily immediately groaned. "Oh no." Her cousins laughed. "Oh yes." The oldest album opened. Tiny Emily appeared, wearing oversized rain boots while proudly holding a muddy frog. Another picture showed flour covering her face after a failed attempt to bake cookies with her mother. Then came elementary school talent shows, missing front teeth, crooked Halloween costumes, middle school braces. Every page produced another wave of laughter. Emily repeatedly reached for the albums. Her family simply moved them farther away. Noah quietly watched from the couch. This polished marketing executive, who always seemed to know exactly what to say, had once been a fearless little girl who climbed trees, collected insects in glass jars, and insisted mismatched socks brought good luck. He had never seen her laugh so freely, without presentations, without deadlines, without responsibilities. She looked comfortable and safe, entirely herself, and somehow more beautiful than ever. As evening settled over the countryside, everyone gathered around a fire pit behind the house. Marshmallows roasted over glowing coals. Someone strummed an old guitar. Children slowly drifted inside as sleep finally caught up with them. Conversation became quieter, softer, and more reflective. Eventually, Emily and Noah slipped away from the group and wandered onto the front porch. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke after the barbecue. For several minutes, they simply listened to crickets singing beneath the stars. Then Emily spoke. "Can I ask you something?" Noah nodded. "You don't have to answer." He smiled. "I know." She hesitated. "You always seem—" She searched for the right word. "Careful. Like you're afraid to let people get too close." The porch grew quiet again. Finally, Noah leaned back in his chair. "I was engaged." Emily looked toward him. He continued calmly. "We were supposed to get married 6 years ago. There was a church, a guest list, a honeymoon, the whole plan." He smiled faintly. "Then she was diagnosed with cancer." Emily remained completely still. "We kept postponing the wedding. We thought she'd recover. We believed we'd have more time." His eyes drifted toward the dark sky. "We didn't." After a long silence, he quietly continued. "When she passed away, I packed away the ring, the invitations, the tuxedo, everything. I told myself work was easier. If I never planned another future, I could never lose one again." Emily finally understood. It had never been weddings Noah avoided. It had been hope. Without thinking, she gently reached over and rested her hand on his. Neither of them spoke for a while. Some grief deserved silence more than sympathy. Eventually, Emily looked toward the warm lights glowing inside the farmhouse. "My dad smiled more today than I've seen him smile in years." Her voice was almost a whisper. "I almost missed that." She turned back toward Noah. "Thank you." He looked at her. "For buying that ticket. You gave up your trip, so I could keep a promise." Noah followed her gaze toward the house. Richard laughed loudly at something inside. Emily's grandmother was probably feeding everyone another slice of pie. The repaired rocking chair gently moved back and forth on the porch. Family photographs still lay scattered across the coffee table, a place where complete strangers were welcomed without hesitation. A slow smile spread across Noah's face. "I think," he looked at Emily, "it bought me something better." She understood exactly what he meant. For the first time in years, Noah no longer felt like a man simply passing through life, and for the first time in years, Emily no longer felt guilty every time she came home. Neither of them realized it that night, but the last train ticket had quietly become the first page of a story they would remember for the rest of their lives. Early Monday morning, the railway finally reopened. The flooded highways had receded overnight, the damaged tracks had been cleared, and for the first time since the storm, travelers could continue their journeys. By 8 o'clock, Noah's backpack was already resting beside the Parker family's front door. Emily's mother packed enough homemade food to feed him for several days despite his repeated insistence that Seattle was only a few hours away. Her grandmother quietly slipped another bag of chocolate chip cookies into his backpack while pretending no one noticed. Richard walked him to the porch. He held Noah's hand a little longer than necessary. "You'll come back." It wasn't a question. Noah smiled. "I'd like that." Outside, the morning air still carried the scent of rain. Emily volunteered to drive him to the station. Neither of them mentioned that this strange little chapter of their lives was about to end. The drive was peaceful, almost too peaceful. They talked about the weather, about Richard's repaired rocking chair, about the Parker family's remarkably talented golden retriever, anything, except the fact that neither of them wanted to say goodbye. When they reached the station, the train was already waiting. Passengers climbed aboard one by one. Noah picked up his backpack, then looked back at Emily. "I guess this is where we go back to being strangers." Emily smiled sadly. "I don't think strangers usually know each other's grandmother." He laughed. "That's fair." Silence settled between them again. Emily looked down at her hands. She wanted to hug him. She didn't. Noah wanted to ask her to visit Seattle. He didn't. Some feelings arrive before people know what to do with them. Finally, Emily reached into her purse. "Do you?" She hesitated. "Want my number?" Noah's smile widened. "I was hoping you'd ask." They exchanged phones, typed in their contact information. No dramatic promises, no awkward confessions, just two people quietly making sure this wouldn't be the last conversation they ever had. As the train doors closed, Noah looked out the window. Emily waved. He waved back. Neither of them realized they were already counting the days until they would see each other again. The first message arrived later that evening. Emily sent a picture of Richard sitting proudly in his repaired rocking chair. Mission accomplished. Noah replied with a picture of Seattle's skyline outside his apartment. Bridge engineer safely returned home. A few days later, Emily sent a photo of a birthday cake someone at work had attempted to decorate. Proof that marketing should never bake. Noah answered with a photograph of a half-finished bridge. "This bridge is more emotionally stable than most people I know." Emily laughed so loudly in her office that 3 coworkers turned to stare at her. The conversations slowly became part of everyday life. The first week, a few messages. The second, longer conversations. By the end of the month, video calls had quietly replaced text messages. Neither remembered who had started calling first. Neither cared. When Emily had an important presentation, Noah always wished her luck before she walked into the boardroom. When Noah worked late at construction sites, Emily reminded him that coffee wasn't technically considered dinner. Autumn became winter. Winter became spring. Some weekends Noah drove to Portland just to try another bakery Emily insisted was absolutely worth 3 hours in the car. Other weekends, Emily somehow managed to schedule client meetings in Seattle that always ended suspiciously close to Noah's favorite coffee shop. Their lives gradually wove themselves together. Neither of them ever announced that they were dating. Yet everyone around them quietly assumed they already were. One crisp autumn afternoon, Emily decided to surprise Noah. She stopped by his construction site, carrying sandwiches and coffee. The receptionist pointed toward the unfinished building. "He's out back." Emily smiled and headed around the corner. Then she stopped. About 20 yards away, Noah knelt to greet a little girl no older than 6. The child threw herself into his arms. He lifted her effortlessly. She wrapped both arms around his neck. He laughed. She kissed his cheek. Emily froze. Every happy thought she'd carried there vanished in an instant. A little girl. Had Noah never told her? Her fingers tightened around the paper bag. For several painful seconds, she simply stood there. Then she quietly turned around. She reached her car, opened the driver's door and sat inside. For the first time in months, her eyes filled with tears. She laughed bitterly at herself. "You idiot. You never even asked." Just as she reached for the ignition, someone knocked gently on the window. Emily looked up. Noah, confused and concerned. He motioned for her to lower the window. "You came." His smile slowly disappeared when he saw her expression. "What happened?" Emily forced a smile. "Nothing. You don't look like nothing." Before she could answer, another man wearing a reflective safety vest hurried toward them. "There you are." He laughed apologetically. "My wife finally made it." He reached down and took the little girl's hand. Come on, Mia. The child waved enthusiastically. Bye, Uncle Noah. Emily blinked. The man smiled. Our daycare closed early. Noah offered to watch her while I finished today's inspection. He clapped Noah on the shoulder. I owe you again. No problem. Father and daughter walked away together. Emily slowly covered her face with both hands. Noah folded his arms. So, you thought I had a secret family? She groaned. I wrote an entire heartbreaking movie in my head. In under 30 seconds, he laughed. You've definitely been working too much, and you should probably ask questions before writing screenplays. She couldn't help laughing too. The paper bag suddenly felt much lighter. She held it up. I brought lunch. I was hoping you did. They spent the next hour sitting on unfinished concrete steps, eating sandwiches and laughing until the misunderstanding became another story they would tease each other about for years. Spring quietly gave way to summer. Then one Tuesday morning, Emily received the phone call she had dreamed about for nearly a decade. Corporate headquarters wanted her in New York, vice president of marketing, executive leadership, a salary she had never imagined earning. One condition: she had to relocate within 6 weeks. 5 years earlier, she would have accepted before the conversation even ended. Now, she stared at the offer letter for almost an hour, because for the first time in her career, success had somewhere else to compete against. A few evenings later, she met Noah at their favorite waterfront cafe in Seattle. He knew immediately something was wrong. She quietly slid the offer letter across the table. He read every page, then looked back at her. This is incredible. It is. You earned this. I know. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. I don't know what to do. For a long moment, Noah said nothing. He looked out across Elliott Bay, then back at her. Emily took a shaky breath. If I stay... He gently interrupted. Don't. She frowned. Don't what? Don't ask me to answer that. Silence settled between them. Finally, Noah smiled sadly. I love you enough to never let you give up your dream because of me. Emily's eyes immediately filled with tears. He reached across the table and held her hand. Whatever you choose, his voice was calm. I'll be proud of you. You mean that? I do. You've spent years building this future. I'll never be the reason you stop chasing it. Tears slipped down Emily's cheeks. Not because he was asking her to leave, but because he wasn't. This wasn't a man trying to keep the woman he loved close. This was a man who loved her enough to let her become everything she had worked so hard to become. As they walked along the waterfront that evening, Emily quietly whispered, I hope you find your way home too. Noah looked at her for a long moment. A gentle smile crossed his face. Maybe, I already did. Emily smiled without fully understanding what he meant. She wouldn't understand, until exactly 1 year later, when a framed train ticket would finally give her the answer. 8 months passed. Autumn quietly returned to the Pacific Northwest. The maple trees around Seattle began turning shades of amber and crimson, just as they had on the night Noah and Emily first met. Life had taken both of them in different directions. Emily spent months leading national marketing campaigns from New York, proving she deserved every bit of the promotion she had earned. Then something unexpected happened. The company announced a major expansion on the West Coast. A new executive office would open in Seattle. Emily was offered the chance to lead it. This time, she didn't have to choose between her career and the people she loved. She accepted immediately. Not because of Noah, because, for the first time in her life, success finally gave her the freedom to choose where home could be. A week before the move, Emily sent Noah a simple message. I'll be taking the last train into Seattle next Friday. A few seconds later, his reply appeared. I'll be there. Nothing more, nothing less. Some promises never needed extra words. Friday evening arrived. King Street Station looked almost exactly as it had 8 months earlier. The same polished floors, the same departure board, the same quiet rush of travelers hurrying toward their platforms. Only one thing had changed. Emily wasn't running anymore. She stepped off the train carrying one suitcase instead of an entire career on her shoulders. The station announcement echoed overhead. Welcome to Seattle, she smiled. This city no longer felt like a place she visited. It felt like somewhere she belonged. Then she spotted him. Noah stood near the same ticket counter where everything had begun. He wore the same calm smile she had missed every single day. In his hands was a wooden picture frame. Emily walked toward him. Neither of them rushed. Neither needed to. When they finally stopped in front of each other, they simply smiled. You came. You asked me to. She laughed softly. I guess I did. Noah handed her the frame. Open it. Emily looked down. Behind the glass sat an old train ticket, slightly faded, carefully preserved, laminated so time could never erase it. The very last confirmed ticket from the evening they first met. She laughed. You kept it? Noah nodded. It's probably the most expensive ticket I've ever bought. She looked up, confused. But, you gave it away, he smiled. Exactly. She gently traced the edges of the ticket with her fingertips. A tiny piece of paper, worth almost nothing, yet somehow it had changed everything. Turn it over. Emily flipped the frame around. A small handwritten note rested beneath the back panel. It read only 2 words. Turn around. She frowned, then slowly looked over her shoulder. Noah was no longer standing where he had been. He had taken a few quiet steps back. In one hand, he held a small velvet ring box. Emily laughed through gathering tears. You planned this? I had help. From who? My future mother-in-law. She laughed even harder. That sounds exactly like my mom. It was. Noah walked back toward her. He didn't kneel immediately. Instead, he looked around the station, then back at Emily. 8 months ago, I told you I'd find another way home. She remembered. Every word. I thought I was talking about getting back to Seattle. He smiled. I wasn't. He opened the ring box. The funny thing is, I thought I missed the last train. He paused. It turns out, it was the first one that actually mattered. Emily's tears were already falling. Noah looked into her eyes. The last ticket. I thought I was giving away my seat. He smiled softly. It turns out, I was finding my way home. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The station seemed to disappear around them. Emily reached toward the ring. Before Noah could kneel, she gently took it from the box, slipped it onto her own finger. Perfect. She admired it for exactly 1 second before looking back at him with the same playful smile he had fallen in love with months earlier. She lifted her hand. Can I finally buy the next ticket? Noah laughed. A full, joyful laugh that echoed beneath the high ceiling of the station. Only if we're sitting together. Emily stepped into his arms. This time, there was no rushing train, no approaching storm, no fear of missing something. Only 2 people who had finally arrived exactly where they were meant to be. That evening, instead of celebrating alone, they drove straight to Maple Ridge. The Parker family had insisted on one condition. If you're getting engaged, you'd better come tell us in person. The old farmhouse glowed warmly beneath the evening sky. Richard opened the front door. He looked from Emily to Noah, then immediately noticed the ring. A slow grin spread across his face. Well, he stepped aside. I'd say somebody finally caught the right train. Laughter filled the house. Emily's grandmother hugged Noah before he even had a chance to speak. I told you all, my future grandson. I was just early. Even Noah couldn't stop laughing. As conversations and laughter drifted through the house, the camera slowly wandered into the living room. Richard's old rocking chair rested beside the fireplace. Above it hung a wooden frame. Inside, the last train ticket, protected beneath glass. Beside it sat the family photograph from the unexpected Sunday barbecue. Noah stood beside Emily, not because anyone had asked him to, because that was where he belonged. Richard glanced at the old grandfather clock. The hands read exactly 7:43 p.m. He smiled to himself. The train they almost missed. He looked toward Emily and Noah laughing together in the kitchen. Turned out to be the one that brought him home. The camera slowly pulled away from the warm farmhouse. The lights grew smaller against the autumn night, and somewhere beyond the trees, another evening train quietly passed through the darkness. This time, no one was in a hurry to catch it. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can change the course of an entire life. Noah thought he was giving away a train ticket. Emily thought she was simply trying not to disappoint her father one more time. Neither of them could have imagined that one selfless decision would become the beginning of a love story neither had been searching for. You finally realize that the right person isn't the one who changes your plans. They're the one who makes every unexpected detour feel like home. If you had been standing at that ticket counter with only 1 seat left, would you have given it to a complete stranger? And do you believe one small act of kindness can truly change the rest of your life? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. And if you enjoy it, please subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories. We'll see you in the next story, where another ordinary moment may become someone's extraordinary forever.